Hey everyone, it's Tim again. Thanks for coming back to my channel. Today I want to do another reading from my first novel and book one of the Dragon and the White series, the aptly named Dragon and the Whites. Today we're going to be taking a look at a portion of chapter 2, which is one of my favorites. It might not mean much to you as a reader, but this was actually the event that happened to me in real life about 18 years ago now. That kind of spawned me to actually start writing the first iteration of this story that would ultimately become the book. I was doing a term abroad while I was at WPI, and I was doing a project at didn't even exist yet, but the center at Iceland, Reykjavik. And it was basically just us doing an economics project. We stayed with the brother of our mentor, and we had a great time. We were there for about 2.5 months. I fell in love with the country, and it inspired me to write a lot of what ended up becoming the basis for this story. So we're going to see the hero of this portion, Tryggvi, go through a kind of an embarrassing little incident, and it happened to me in real life. Obviously, added a different character in there, and maybe embellished the level of excitement perhaps that went into it. But for the most part, the event really happened. It is taking place on the southern coast of the Westman Islands. I'll include a link to the Google Maps area down in the description below if you want to go check it out. Iceland in general, super beautiful country. This island is awesome. It's pristine. Not a lot of people live there. There's no trash. Everything's just clean and pure. And I found the most beautiful little cove that I got to hang out in for a couple hours by myself one day because I literally fell into it. So I highly recommend you go to Iceland if you ever get the chance. And if you do, take the ferry. It's about a 45-minute ride, and go check out the Westman Islands. All right, so let's dive in. Enjoy. Gazing down near the shore at the crashing waves and rocky terrain, Tryggvi soon spotted the hidden cove that the older warrior had described earlier at the fire. Down below him to the left, a wall of rock jutted up from the dark blue water to create a natural shelter, which blocked off a small area of sandy beach and a calm pool of water from the ocean outside. Within this tiny cove, the water was still and relaxed, and its surface reflected the surrounding hillside like a mirror. Providing natural protection, it attracted a variety of birds, fish, and seals, which occasionally disturbed its glass-like appearance as they played in the water. There was a good chance that none of these animals had ever encountered a human being before, and he wondered if they would even fear his approach. This adventure was exactly what his blossoming inquisitive mind had hoped for on this trip. He was eager to reach the cove and imagine all the fun he would have had before heading back home. Realizing that he had lost track of time, and the fact that part of this trip was to witness the rise and fall of the non-setting sun later in the evening, he looked back to the west to see the position of the celestial entity. Given the position of the sun on the horizon now, it looked like it was already back on the rise. "I missed it," Tryggvi muttered to himself. While he may have blundered this portion of the expedition, it was still impressive to watch it rising at such a late hour in the night. Based on the angle in the sky and what he understood of astronomy, he estimated that it was around 2 o'clock in the morning. If that were true, then the adults back in the camp would be awake in a matter of hours. It was time to get to the cove. Looking for a clear path to the bottom of the slope, he was surprised to find that there was no easy way down. A colony of puffin holes extended down to his right for several hundred feet. He could tell by the small holes pocketing the hillside and the swarms of small black flies hovering a few feet above the grass. He had investigated a few of these peculiar birds' nest tunnels the other day near the camp and was familiar with their telltale signs. Off to his left, however, was a slide of gray-white gravel that stretched down the entire length of the hill to the far end of the cove. Deciding that this was a substantially quicker way down to his goal, Tryggvi set off through the grass to the top of the rock slide. Upon reaching the top of the rock slide, he quickly came to terms that it was much higher up than it looked like from the top of the crater's edge. The rock slide appeared to go all the way down to the beach cove, meaning that he would be doing a combination of walking and sliding down an almost 1,000-foot declination. The rocky terrain to either side of the slide meant that he either had to carefully and slowly make his way to the bottom, or he risked his neck on a dangerous but faster option. The former was safer, but it would take far too long. If he wanted to pull this off without getting in trouble, he would have to take the fast way down. Taking a deep breath and building up his courage, Trigby stepped forward onto the gravel and began his journey down the slope. Things were going well for the first few minutes of his experimental run. He took careful, measured steps and tried to limit how much he let each foot slip in the flowing stream of rocks. He smiled as he continued, happy to see that his risk was paying off. That was, of course, until the gravel started to move around him more rapidly. More importantly, he noticed that the rocks and sand were sliding down behind him, and a larger volume of slippery rock surface was pouring down around his feet while he tried to walk. Trying to walk soon turned into trying not to fall down, slide down on his backside, nor become buried in dirt and rock. As the gravel gave way and slid faster down the hill, Trigby soon found himself out of control and unable to maintain his balance. He began tumbling down through the sand and rocks, feet first in the beginning, rolling sideways after a few seconds, and soon he was flying head over heels as he turned down into a full-blown cartwheel down the hill. Throughout all of this, he valiantly tried to maintain control of his body, especially his head and his array of new equipment. Despite the scrapes, cuts, and bruises that he was conscious of acquiring as he rapidly descended down the slide, he was cognizant of the fact that this could destroy his new horn. Additionally, he was not used to having a weapon strapped to his hip, and feared that he might kill himself on his sword alone. He wasn't about to break his newly acquired horn in this unfortunately graceless debacle, nor was he interested in impaling himself upon his own blade. If he kept this up for any longer, though, he might not have a choice in the matter, as either or both options became more relevant. Realizing that doom may very well be a tumble or two away, Trigby decided to put an end to it. Seeing a rolling blue of green and brown color getting closer and closer to him with each passing revolution, he recognized that he was rapidly approaching a small bush down to his right. Reaching out desperately, he managed to grasp the base of the plant and hold on with all of his might. The sudden stop was not without trouble, however, as the instantaneous stop jerked his arm upward and put immediate and violent strain on the bush, its roots, and the ligaments in his shoulder and elbow. As the hillside was covered in an extremely thin layer of soil and moss, he instantly ripped the bush's roots from the earth and thin covering of organic matter. The jerky motion whipped him up into the air, and he spun around before crashing into the sand below. His vision blurry, he found himself to be very tired all of a sudden, and darkness overtook the world around him. After what felt like hours, Trigby awoke. He was staring up at the hill that he had just fallen down. From his new vantage point, the hill appeared much taller than he previously believed. The sky was also much brighter. He counted the puffy clouds by drifting overhead, and he suddenly remembered where he was and what he was supposed to be doing. Still holding the small bush in his hand, he looked up at the divot where he had ripped it out of the ground. The bush had saved him from falling straight down to the bottom and slowed him just enough only to get bruised and a little banged up on the landing. Thankfully, the fall had only urged his pride, and he was very glad that there were no witnesses to this exploit. If any of his friends back home had seen this plunge of his, he had been the brunt of their jokes for a while. He'd be sore for a few days, but at least he had managed to get down in one piece. After a few more minutes of rest, Trigby stretched out his muscles and built up the strength and dignity to try to stand up again and get back on his feet. Looking around, he took in the beauty of his hidden sanctuary. The sand here was packed firmly from the lapping waves that rose to the level during high tide. The untrodden ground was smooth and pristine. The rocks rose high above, at least 3 times his height, and the sun shone brightly down his side. Despite the vast ocean on the other side of the rocks, he could barely hear the waves or crashing or the howling wind. Grasses grew up in the sunny spots, and the birds flocked to feast on fish and bugs in the placid water. This was the most relaxing place he had been to since leaving his native land. It was a shame that he had to head back so soon. Not wanting to waste another minute, Trigby began to walk around the cove and observe the plant and animal life as he explored. There were various small flowers and bushes growing, several species of grass, a collection of small birds and puffins, as well as a mixture of fish schooling in the shallow water, gently lapping the shore. In the water, he could see an assemblage of igneous rocks formed from spewing molten lava during the volcanic creation of this island. The strange beauty of the volcanic rocks never ceased to amaze him. Each one was unique and a wonder to behold. All in all, this was a neat area, and he was glad to have stumbled upon it, even if it hurt a little in the process. Glancing up to the sky above, he noticed that the sun had risen even higher over the horizon, meaning that the morning hours were approaching quickly, and his exploration time was rapidly coming to an end. The men would soon rise to restart the fires and make breakfast. He should start heading back soon if he wanted to see anything else on this part of the island, and still make it back in time to not be noticed. As he turned to walk back towards the hill, he noticed an indentation in the rock's face off to the side that looked curiously out of place. Walking a little closer, it appeared to not just be an invitation, but possibly the entrance to a small cave. Inquiring as to what might be in there, he quietly approached and almost stuck his head into the area. Brave as he might be, he was wary of unknown spaces and decided to draw his blade for the first time. Firmly gripping his fingers around the leather-wrapped handle, he extracted the weapon from its sheath. He cringed at the light scraping sound it made on the way out, as part of the steel had contacted one of the small rivets holding the leather together. Gathering his courage, he extended his sword beyond the edge of the mouth of the cave and slowly rounded the corner to peer inside. As his eyes passed the edge of the mouth of the cave, his eyes quickly gathered in all the information and relayed it to his brain in the process. The opening was about 5 feet deep, 4 feet tall, and just wide enough for him to walk through without bumping his elbows. From what he could tell, it was empty inside, from a few rocks and pebbles on the floor. Laughing to himself, Trigby slid the sword back into his sheath and allowed himself to relax. Looking more closely around the bottom of the cave, one of the stones immediately captured his attention. He noticed that the stone appeared to be very different from the others nearby. It was ovular in shape, as wide as his waist, and too thick for him to firmly wrap both hands around. Its speckled surface had an alluring blue-green tint. Intrigued, he picked the stone up and found it surprisingly lightweight given its size. He walked it back to the water's edge to wash off the sand, algae, and debris that had accumulated on it over time. Once clean, the stony surface shone brilliantly and glowed in the early morning sun. He decided to keep it as a souvenir. I'm going to leave off there, as I guys want you to be excited about the Dragon of the Whites and go check it out for yourself. Like I said, that was a small clip from Chapter 2, the very beginning of the book, and it really kind of dives into how Trigby begins his journey going from Norway to what will be called America in the future. But it's a quite vastly different land during Trigby's time. I highly recommend you check the book out if you haven't already. It's available in paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. You can find the paperback and hardcover from any local retailer that you enjoy. I always tell you to support your local booksellers. We got to keep those stores alive. Audiobook right now is available only on Audible, but it will probably be on Libro FM sometime in the future. I'm still working out the details on that. Either way, I hope that you enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you at a convention sometime soon, as this is the beginning of 2021 and we haven't got vaccinated yet. So I want to get out, talk books and dragons with you guys, and in the meantime, keep reading, stay safe, and enjoy. All right, thanks, and have a good night. All right, bye.